Daimyo Hermitaur. I also have regular Hermitaur, for those who are fans of the regular Hermitaur. Also known as Daimyo Zazami in Japanese, this is the infamous crab monster. So I built this earlier in the year alongside Shogun Senator, but as far as I'm aware, Daimyo Hermitaur is the more popular of the two. At least that's the one I got more requests for, so that's why I'm showcasing it first right now. It is important to note that this version of the crab is not the same version of the build that you'll see in the instructions on my Patreon. The version that you get in the instructions is significantly better than this version. I want to make sure with all my builds that the instructions version is the best version of the model that you could possibly get. I could make this match the model in the instructions, but I don't care enough about Daimyo Hermitaur to do that. I love this monster, but I don't think I love it that much where I want it to be absolutely accurate. I'm happy and content with how it looks right now. One of the details I should mention that is missing is there are little black details on the claws, little black highlights on the edge, and those are missing here. So that's just one example of a difference between this model and the model you'll find in the instructions that I've built. So I primarily took influence from the Stories version. However, it ended up looking closer to Monster Hunter Diaries, Monster Hunter Feline Village. This is another monster like Zynogra that has very clear color blocking, and where the places where the color is very defined. So because the color blocking is so vibrant and well placed, it's very easy to do that in LEGO. Time for a quick size comparison. So here's a random minifigure that I just found. Here is a random Bionicle for scale with action figures, and here is a random anime figure. I'll put her a little bit closer to sort of show the general size. Daimyo Hermitaur is not that big. He's a little compact little ball, basically, with a bunch of appendages coming out of his body. So he scales pretty well with different things. I would say he scales really well with minifigures. That's pretty accurate to how big Daimyo Hermitaur is. The small Hermitaur is pretty good size. It's about the size as they were in Monster Hunter 2. I think that the skull overall is just too small compared to the rest of Daimyo Hermitaur. This really should be a little bit taller and a little bit thicker. If I made the skull in the back any bigger, I think that the whole thing couldn't stand at all, and I have to think of some other way to make sure that the legs actually stay up. But I wanted to make sure that the cost of the actual build wasn't too high, and on top of that, I wanted to make sure that it could actually stand up. And as you can see, sometimes I actually struggle to get it to stand up. I left the anime figure out because I wanted to recreate that one meme image that I always post, where it's the giant crab versus the anime girl, and the background is just like a nothing. There's nothing in the background, because to me that's what Monster Hunter's aesthetic is and looks best as. Moving on to posability. Now, Daimyo has a ton of posability. Obviously, all of its limbs can be moved around. It's very easy to do that swiping motion that he does in the game. There's a lot you could really do with it just to play with. Like, it's very easy to play with Daimyo Hermitaur. It's not gonna break on you, and it's very easy, I guess, to sort of recreate. This is definitely a build that works better in play rather than just having it stationary. If you're just playing around with him, you'll find that it's a lot of fun. Like, it's like, yep, okay, now that's not. When he's on his own, when he's just like that, it's like, what am I looking at? But the moment you start, handling him, you're like, oh, that's Daimyo Hermitaur. Oh my goodness, it's alive. Although the crab in the game is, massive. Here, this is about the size of like a large crab in real life, so it really feels like you just have like a crab toy. It's very neat. So of course the arms and the legs can all be posed. The claws can open and close. They can actually do a lot of posability with the claws. Interestingly, the eyes can also be manipulated. The antenna can also be manipulated, and the teeth can also. It's very, very slight, but they can also be manipulated as well to give some extra movement. Also in the back, the skull mouth can be opened and closed. Because the shell is so small compared to the actual Daimyo Hermitaur, he struggles a bit to do the signature shield, like the shield guard pose that he sort of does. So Daimyo Hermitaur will kind of do this, and then his legs would normally bunch up, right? But you can't really do it on this model. So partially that's because the skull is too small, and again that's for stability and to bring the cost down. But also it's because the legs have only 3 segments in them instead of the usual 4 segments that are there on the actual model. This is a really, really bad shot. So it comes at the cost of not being able to do the signature pose, but ultimately I think that it's worth it because he's able to pose, he's able to hold up together. He has better stability this way. Daimyo is very stable. I found that he just doesn't break at all. The only issue is that the horn on the monoblow skull will fall down pretty easily, so it's sort of unfortunate, but otherwise he holds together really well and probably won't break on you. He may not stand up, but he's not gonna break, so he's definitely good as a toy, not as good as a like a display model probably. So I have a few gripes with the build. Like, I'm happy with it. I'm very happy with the instructions version. I'm actually really, really proud of the Plum Daimyo Hermitaur that you can find on my Patreon. That the Diablo skull I did for that one is beautiful, and I think the colors do it justice. But my big gripe with this model is the antenna, because I feel that the antenna are just a bit too small. They're too short. Normally the antenna would probably reach up to where the monoblow skull ends. Like they reach out pretty far. And there's options for that. I know there's fishing rod pieces that could work. There's these like long bar pieces that could potentially work. I settled on the harpoon piece because the harpoon piece is easy to come by and it's cheap. And I feel that if I use those other pieces, it might be more difficult for you guys to acquire. However, I do suggest if you're like, hey, I kind of wish the antenna were longer, go ahead and like come up with some solutions of your own, because I know there's multiple solutions out there for long antenna. But I just think that it's for the best that we just use the short antenna, both for playability and also to make the model cheap, so you don't have to spend so much money buying these rare parts. So as I said before, the instructions for this guy, as well as his little friend, the Hermitaur, and Plum Daimyo Hermitaur, and Stonefist Daimyo Hermitaur, the instructions for all 4 of the Hermitaurs are available on my Patreon. All my instructions are available under the 2nd tier membership, as well as the parts list and a guide on how to order those parts in order to make the model. Just FYI, Plum is the most expensive option, but he looks absolutely fire. I love the way that he looks. As always, I want to deliver my thoughts on Daimyo Hermitaur as a monster in-game. I like crabs a lot. I feel like they belong in every title. I feel like they are actually more important to include than the mammalian monsters. Invertebrates are creatures that we don't normally interact with often, and it's common for people to be afraid of bugs or other multi-legged invertebrate creatures, which this makes them perfect for Monster Hunter because they come off as truly monstrous. Using the wyvern skull as a shell is a wonderful gimmick that illustrates that everything in the world of Monster Hunter is interconnected in some way. It really helps that ecological sense, that hyper-realistic sort of feeling. I really like the way that the Hermitaurs fought in the old gen games. The techniques that they used were very simple, which reflected their primitive invertebrate brain. They're not really capable of high-level thinking, so many of their attacks are simple defense mechanisms and protocols that made them really good mid-tier monsters, or at least with Daimyo Hermitaur, it's a very good low-tier monster before you fight the more sophisticated animals like Rathian. I feel in Sunbreak, though, they added this new jump attack, and it comes off looking a little bit too calculated. Like, it looks like Daimyo Hermitaur thinks about it for a second, and then does the attack like it... I don't know, it feels too calculated for an invertebrate animal. So overall, I really like Daimyo Hermitaur as a mid-tier monster, and I think that he should be in every game. Thank you everyone for watching. Special thanks to my patrons. Thank you all for your support. I was sent a couple pictures from my followers. Some people built my builds based off the instructions, and it's really awesome to see people building what I've come up with. I'm really happy that people are enjoying my work. As always, again, check out my Patreon for instructions, and there's more builds on the way. So, next time, guess what we're building? That's right, the fabulous Brute Wyvern, Brachydios. Stay tuned.